Let's stay with the appointment of the MMDCs. Evans Mensah is head of our political desk here at JoyNews. He joins me now in the studio. Evans, we've been following this story since yesterday. Let's look at the implications. But before that, let's start with what this tells or this speaks about the NPP as a political party.
I mean, it's such an interesting thing. It's a vicious cycle. Each new government is mandated by the Constitution to appoint MMDCs. Unfortunately, in our political history, each time they have done so, is greeted with protests across the country. So it has to be fairly stated that it's not an NPP phenomenon. It's a political party phenomenon. It's part of our body politic. Having said that, if you, of course, I mean, for a party that campaign on, change, you will think that things would have happened a bit more differently. And if you listen to them since yesterday, they had indicated that they had consulted a bit broadly across the country. I must say, though, if you compare the protests that we've had since yesterday to what we had under John Mahama and especially Professor Mills, may he so rest in perfect peace, it appears that, of course, this is his second day, and so it might not be fair to compare because they've run their full course. But so far, it appears the protest we're seeing is, in comparison to what we've seen in the past, this one is a bit on the lower side in terms of what we've seen in the past. On
the lower side?
Yes, just because it's the second day.
Okay.
If you go back to Dr. Mills' era, yesterday we heard in the northern region people were burning
party paraphernalia, party property.
Similar. I think that's the only place where we've seen outright destruction of property. But in the past, we've seen in many parts of the country, people hitting the streets, protesting, burning stuff, to the point, some even going ahead, some party threatening to resign en bloc. We've heard that today from the NPP, I think, in the voting
what
region.
the issue has been is that you talk about the protests. So the protests have been there, but now you're seeing protests that are more violent than what has been recorded.
No, it's been like that in the past.
Like this.
It's been like that. In fact, I'm just pulling up some of the previous cases of the protests that we've seen. It's been destroying stuff, particularly in the northern region. We've seen that. So it happened in the past. The MPP should control it. Yesterday, for example, we had assurances from Tabino was on your show, and was making promises that people will be consulted further. If they anticipated
and saying that there are other ways that you could still be included in government.
They anticipated this. When they announced this yesterday, it was a press conference at which we had the information minister, we also had the local government minister. I heard the information minister saying, for example, yesterday, that the police should step in, arrest people and prosecute them if people go ahead to vandalize property. Because they had anticipated themselves that this was going to happen. That is a good first step to give police the go-ahead. And they don't need the go-ahead anyway, but we live in a society where the security agencies have become so politicized. So that is an anticipation that this was going to happen. I want to wait a few more days to see how this spreads, and if indeed it spreads. So far, you've seen it in the northern region. We've seen it in the Volta region today. We've seen it in at least
upper east region as well.
Yes, at least.
And we understand somewhere in the central region as well. I think a few in the Ashanti region as well.
Yes. So at least we've seen what 10 areas, 10 specific districts. I mean, thinking about we have more than 200 districts, right? If you take 10 out of that. That is a pretty small chunk that is doing this. But it's still, for me, the bigger question is what this says about our democracy. All this fundamentally boils down to political patronage. The people who are agitating believe the individuals who have been put there will not sort of give them the preferential treatment that they want.
Or they feel they're entitled to.
Exactly, that sense of entitlement that they want in terms of contracts, in terms of giving out school feeding program, for example. They'll get their wives exactly. That is what this is all about. And we need to approach this systematically and structurally to deal with it. Other than that, it won't stop. It's taken quite a long time though for the president to do this. And the explanation we've had formally is that because he wanted to consult as broadly as possible, that is why this has happened. And well, we wait to see in the next few days whether they are able to control it or whether it gets out of hand.
Either ways, what will be the implication for this party and its governance?
I mean, we've had threats. The advantage for the MPP and all parties who come to power is that this often happens in the first year. If you don't control it, in the case of John Mahama, he had a tough time, particularly in the National region, where he kept on sending names and the people kept on rejecting them. If you don't control it, then it moves from, you don't settle a particular area, and it moves the second year, then it becomes even more difficult. So the bigger implication could be, because once you have all, and the complaints will start that the grassroots are being isolated. They are not taking care of the grassroots. The NDC had that. In fact, that's the formally reason they gave us for the Muntie 3, because they thought, do something to satisfy the grassroots.
Right.
So in other words, they need to nip this in the bud some way, somehow, to prevent this from spreading to other areas, because there could be copycat districts especially if the president is forced to replace an individual because of the protest. Then others who have been quiet because the party has said use the channels will then say, if they could get the person replaced,
that actually works,
then let's jump in. In the past, it's happened. They forced the hand of Atamils to make a lot of changes when they first put out the names. And so the party needs to get hold of this quickly and try and deal with it. Other than that, it might spread.
Okay, thank you so much, Evans. Evans Mensah is head of our political desk here at JoyNews, helping us to, get some analysis from what's happening. Well, we're going to take a quick story, but just so you know, right after that story, Joseph Akable will be joining me and we'll be talking about what accounted, according to a research done at the University of Ghana, for the crushing defeat of the NDC in the 2016 elections. Akable will be joining me, but for now, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah would have been 108 years old today if he was alive. But 45 years ago this day, the first president of Ghana died in Guinea of skin cancer. Commemorating his anniversary, the Convention People's Party laid wreaths at his tomb at the Kwame Nkrumah Mausoleum, and then did something significant in his memory. Hannah Odame is here to tell us more. Well, she's not here actually, but she was there and has put together this information.
As part of celebrating the 45th anniversary of the death of Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the CPP have decided to do something significant, and that is to centralize its database system. And I have with me Yerimambo, who is the Greater Accra Regional Youth Organizer, to explain further why they decided to do this. Now, welcome to join.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So let's start. We're going to register my cameraman. He is Joel Nana-Odro. Okay. And so let's start. He's
so Joel. So we start by getting his name.
Exactly.
So Joel Nana-Odro. So of course he's male.
He's a male.
Yes.
His date of birth is
20. What? What's the date of birth?
21st August 1989.
Okay, 1989.
No, you typed it too many times.
Okay, yeah, so automatically the age should pop up.
Sure.
Yeah, so if it's 27 years, of course, the age should pop up. Then we go to the year he joined the party. So, of course, if it's today he's joined the party, today is 27th. Okay. So we'll leave it at that. His occupation,
he's a broadcast journalist.
Of course, broadcast journalist. Then we go to the ID, very essential information. Yeah.
Okay, you don't have.
Okay, so Joel Nana-Odro is in the system now. So I can come back and edit this at any given time. If it gives me additional information, his street name, his email address, everything, I can just come back to edit. So as far as it's in the database system, I can decide to just print it out here because we'll be issuing cards to them. So from here, we print it out, we laminate, and we issue your ID card.
New cards?
New cards.
As a result of this new system.
We are going to start all over from region, from the regional level, constituency to the polling station level. We're going to issue new cards to all CPP members and all those who want to join the party.
So the CPP has this new innovation. Yeah. To them is expected to at least be one of the things that will help beat the other parties in 2020. And so from the CPP's new database center, my name is Hannah Odame for JoyNews.
Hannah Odame now joins me in the studio to give us further information. Hannah, good to have you once again on the show. This is supposed to register new members.
Exactly.
Right? So what about the old members? Are they going to?
No, old members are also going to be registered. They're going to issue new cards, ID cards, to all members of the CPP.
So you had your cameraman join the CPP?
Yes, my cameraman is a registered. It's a registered CPP member.
Is that ethical? Anyway, well, this is how they decide to commemorate Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Yeah, but you spoke to his son.
Yes.
Yeah, you spoke to his son. What did he say?
Onzi was not too happy because he says that if Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had been alive today, Ghana wouldn't have been noted or called a developing country, would have been developed by now. And so the death of his father stagnated the death of Africa and Ghana in particular. Let's hear more from him.
If he was alive in Guinea, it would be a different matter. But if he was active in Ghana, Ghana would be a completely developed nation by now. We wouldn't be classified as a developing nation, I'm sure, because so many of the nations that were following us and trying to copy us are so far ahead now. And I believe Africa would have been a united continent by now, and I believe we would have done greatly, would have been a developed nation, certainly at least in Ghana, if not in all of the continent. But we still have hope. We are still alive, and he lives in us. Kwame Nkrumah never dies. His vision will never die. His mission is still on because his work is not finished.
We know his mission and vision that he had for Ghana.
Yeah.
Did he die with all of that? Because then if you say Nkrumah never dies, we should have seen a reflection of those visions.
Well, you see, you can always bring a man down, which he was brought down before his time. But you can never kill a man. You can suppress him. You can suppress his vision. You can suppress his work. But it will rise up again. But it's not in the full, steam of things. It's not in its fullness naturally. If it was done to his speed and his vision and his dedication and selflessness and so on, we would have developed much quicker to a much greater level.
All right, so actually, Hannah, the children of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah that a lot of people know have actually contested, his inclusion as the,
exactly. They have even
as a member of the family.
A statement in that regard for a long time.
Did you engage him on that? How did he?
He didn't want to talk about it.
He didn't want to talk about it, but he does carry himself around as
exactly
the son of Dr.
exactly.
Kwame Nkrumah. All right. Well, let's move to the chairman of the party. He was there as well on this special occasion. What did he have to say about the CPP? And of course, people know the state of the CPP, but what did he have to say?
Well, Gifty, when you hear the CPP, there's a notion that the CPP is made up of members who are, in quotes, aged or the old.
Is it just a notion or a reality, actually?
Well, they want to dispute that.
Okay.
And so Professor Daly said, no, come join us. And the CPP is made up of a lot of young and fresh blood, that's the youth, and so let's dispel this notion.
I say, well, you'd say that it's more of actions that attract the people rather than talk. By the way, let's listen to him.
People used to say that CPP is an old man's party. When you came here, how many old people did you see? Yes, look at the young and vibrant ones. Yes. And look at them. And we are preparing actually to lead our way, to make sure that CPP takes over the control of this party again. 2020 election campaign has started now. Yes. We are not going to wait till 2 weeks or 2 months to time. We have started now. And we are a grassroots party. And the other parties have learned from us. So we are the champions of mass movements in Ghana. And we are reviving that one. So there is a wind of change in the world. That those parties which are supposed to be small parties are taking over the world. Is that not true?
It's true. That is correct.
Go around. Now in France even, you go to the Gambia, you go to Nigeria. This is the turn of Ghana. That see people should take over again. All Nkrumahs, wherever you are, come and join us.
Professor, were those the party members or media people? I mean, those he was referring to as a young face?
Well, two of them behind him were party members, and a lot.
The two of them behind him were party people.
A lot were.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, Hannah. Hannah Odame there, bringing us up to speed on what's happening, what the CPP is doing to remember Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana. Corruption, inability of the vice president, Mr. Arthur, to match Dr. Bawumia, unclear nature of campaign message have been identified as some factors that contributed to the NDC's defeat in the 2016 polls. Now, the study, titled Post-Election Analysis, undertaken by the University of Ghana Political Science Department, sampled the views of Ghanaians across the country on what factors they thought contributed to President Mahama's loss after serving one term as president. JoyNews' Joseph Akabley was at the forum where the findings of that study were presented. He joins me now in the studio. Akabley, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's been a while. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I've been around.
Good to see you. What went into this study, by the way?
The interesting thing about this study is the fact that this same team of lecturers before the 2016 elections, they carried out a study where they predicted that President Akufo-Addo will be winning the election. So this time around, it's more or less a follow-up to that study. They've gone back again to ask people why they voted the way they did. Now, what they decided
which then gives them some kind of credibility if they did predict and it came
even
through.
In terms of the margins, and they predicted around 53% will go for President Akufo-Addo. They again talked about which regions will be key. They talked about the 4 swing regions, which they said were likely to swing in favor of President Akufo-Addo, and it turned out that way. So this time around, they identified certain constituencies across the country. Now, what they did is that depending on the population size in terms of voter population, that will decide the number of constituencies they'll select in each region. So for the areas like Upper West and Upper East, where you don't have too many voters, they decided on 3 constituencies for these areas. Whilst across the country, the larger regions like Ashanti, Greater Accra, among others, they looked at 7 constituencies each. So in total, across the country, out of the 10 regions, they looked at 50 constituencies across the country. They engaged people and asked them, why did you vote for this party? What reasons? Why didn't you vote for the NDC? Why did you also vote for the NPP? So that was how come they arrived at this conclusion.
At this conclusion. So let's go into the conclusion before we wrap up. What they're citing the former vice president. They're talking about over-dependence or over-reliance on the fact that the party thought they'd achieved a lot in infrastructure development. Give us some more on that as well.
They also spoke about the attitude of government appointees, and they talked about communicators, some of them saying that the current president could never be a president of the country. They said that this was a theme that had been running in previous campaigns, and Ghanaians were getting quite bored with that theme, so it was appropriate something else was brought in. They again talked about the message of the NDC. They said whilst the NPP was talking about one district, one factory, the NDC, they say, was noted more for the Usain Bolt power pose that we all saw the president do, as well as the No Ababa. So electoral historian Alex Frempong presented the conclusion of the findings.
Okay, we can hear from the horse's own mouth. Always a good thing to do.
Issues of impunity of government appointees. They had become prophets of who should and others who would never be presidents. You also remember the pressure government appointees put on the president to petition the Monty Tray. But the president also has his own slip-ups. Ghanaians have short memories. Ashanti and the Golden Roads. Only former president can debate me. The sleeping Opana on the Western Roads. And Opana with distilled chips. Another big issue was the question of unity and disunity. The NDC tried to exploit MPP's open disunity. But as it turned out, the MPP's open disunity proved better than the patch up or the papered over unity in the NDC. We also remember that so much debt was thrown at Akufo-Addo. By this time, none of them stuck. You remember the Karipo craze? They wanted to depict him as an old man who is who is interested in sugary food, but it turned out to be a plus for him. Most of the things they said against him had been said since 2008. They were overflogged issues. What many people did not remember was that when Nana-Addo did not ask his boys to go to the bush, but accepted the petition, he had redeemed his image at the international level. I've already talked about the 10 visits to the shrine. And when you are going 3 times, people say you have suffered and they should have sympathy for you. There was also the vice presidency factor. You remember the Vice President Amis Atta could not answer any one of the, how many questions? 170 questions by Umia puts. When we come to the issues of manifesto and so on, which the HOD was adducing to, I'll put it in simple terms that 1 district, 1 factory, 1 village, 1 dam, 1 constituency, 1 million, and 1 everything proved catchier than the ND's Usain Bolt inspired No Ababasa. You remember? As it turned out, Akufo-Addo gave Mahama that wide margin which Usain Bolt normally gives to his competitors. But the bigger issue was the swing region factor. I've explained how they voted. And if not for anything, I had mentioned in a presentation here that if not for anything, they will want to retain their kingmaker status. If we have been causing the alternations every time, why do we want to stop it? And they did this in even finer fashion.
That is he's a what? Political historian? Electoral historian, Professor
Alex Frimpong.
Alex Frimpong there at the University of Ghana. Very interesting report he gives there. But we can look at what they predict, you know, for the next election, and of course we have to look at that seriously, given the credibility that they've shown so far. So what did they have to say about it?
So they are highlighting 3 things they want the parties to take note. The first is they said it's very clear from what we've seen that an incumbent president is no longer guaranteed a 2nd term. Again, they also said that if you are in power, it means you can lose the election. Alternation in power is possible in a single round. They said this is the very first time we had a power shifting from one party to the other in a single round election. Okay. And third parties have effectively lost their kingmaker status, talking about the PPP and the other parties. In fact, they describe them as
the
pressure groups.
Your party.
We heard them not long ago, a party of the youth. Okay. We have been told that, in fact, the lecturer described them as pressure groups, and he says they've lost that key role they used to play in the past when parties needed them. So it means that going forward, the bigger parties don't even need them to win the polls.
That's not very good, if you ask me, for our body politic, because there has to be some way, somehow, a third force. Maybe PPP or YASOR would do. But thank you very much, Joseph Akableye, with that update from the University of Ghana. Interesting details there in that report. You're still watching The Pulse with me, Gifty Andopia. I'm going to take a very quick break. When I return, I'll tell you who is suing over, or who is actually getting to charge over the bond issue. Please stay with us.